Think about that one person from your school. Everyone else scattered. Different cities, different states, different lives, at least that's how it looked from the outside. But they stayed. Same hometown. Sometimes the same street they grew up on. And for years, people asked them the same question. Didn't you want more? Here's the thing nobody talks about. That question assumes staying was the lesser choice. But what if it wasn't? What if the person who never left built something that most of us spend the second half of our lives desperately trying to rebuild? Stick with me, because what the psychology actually says here completely blindsided me. For as long as most of us can remember, we've been handed the same story. If you want to grow, leave. If you want opportunity, leave. If you want a real life, a big life, a meaningful life, leave. The people who leave are ambitious. The people who stay are settling. That story is everywhere. In every movie where the hero escapes the small town. In every career coach who tells you to go where the opportunities are. In every dinner table conversation where someone announces they're moving and everyone cheers. And look, I'm not here to tell you that leaving is wrong. Millions of people leave home and build extraordinary lives. This isn't a video about why they made a mistake. This is a video about what the people who stayed built. Because here's something that should stop you cold. Research consistently shows that the majority of adults actually live surprisingly close to where they grew up. Not a small minority. The majority. So if so many people stay near home, why do we keep treating it like a quiet failure? That question is where this gets really interesting. Modern career advice treats geography like it's destiny. Move where the money is. Move where the talent is. Move where the future is. And buried inside that advice is an assumption so deeply baked into our culture that most people never even notice it's there. The assumption that movement equals growth. That if you stayed still, you must have stood still. But here's what that assumption completely misses. For most of human history, people didn't move hundreds of miles from where they were born. They lived in small, tight communities. Same families. Same neighbors. Same familiar faces for entire lifetimes. And relationships in those environments had a quality that almost nobody talks about. They compounded. Think about that word for a second. When we talk about money compounding, we mean the longer it sits and grows, the more it earns, and then it earns on what it already earned. Relationships work the exact same way. A friendship that lasts 30 years isn't just 3 times stronger than a friendship that lasts 10. It's something completely different. Trust compounds. Shared history compounds. The kind of reliability you can't explain to someone who hasn't experienced it. That compounds. And here's the part that hits hard when you really sit with it. Every single time someone moves to a new city, they're not just changing addresses. They're resetting the compound interest on every relationship they had. New city, new coworkers, new neighbors, new friendships starting from zero. The people who stayed weren't avoiding growth. They were protecting something that growth elsewhere would have required abandoning. Actually, before I go any deeper into this, I want to ask you something right now. Whether you stayed in your hometown or you left, drop a comment below and just tell me which one. One word. Stayed or left. That's it. I read every single comment on this channel, and I'm genuinely curious how this community breaks down, because I have a feeling the answers are going to surprise a lot of people in the replies. Go drop that below. Then let's keep going. Because this next part is where it gets fascinating. There's a concept in social science that I think about more and more the older I get. It's called social capital. And it sounds dry and academic until you understand what it actually means, because once you do, you start seeing it everywhere. Social capital is the network of relationships that provides trust, support, information, and belonging within a community. Decades of research consistently link strong social ties to better mental health, longer lives, and significantly higher levels of well-being. But forget the research for a second. Let me make it real. Social capital is the neighbor who notices that your car hasn't moved in 3 days and actually comes to check on you. It's the friend who has known you since you were 13, who knows the version of you that existed before you became whoever you are now. It's the local business owner who asks about your parents by name. It's the person who shows up at your door when life completely falls apart. Not because they have to, not because it's convenient, but because they know you. That's what the person who stayed in their hometown was quietly building. Not in any dramatic or obvious way. Just layer by layer, year by year, conversation by conversation. And here's the brutal reality about social capital that nobody in the go chase your dreams conversation ever talks about. You cannot purchase it. You cannot accelerate it. You cannot network your way into 30 years of knowing someone over a weekend retreat. Takes time. Real time. And for the person who stayed, that clock never stopped running. While everyone else was resetting theirs in a new city, their social capital was compounding. Quietly, invisibly, year after year. But even that, as powerful as it is, isn't the deepest thing that staying creates. There's something underneath all of that. Something harder to measure, harder to explain, and I think honestly harder to rebuild once it's gone. Close your eyes for a second, or don't. You're watching a video, that would be weird. But picture yourself walking through your hometown today. Not the buildings, not the roads, the memories attached to them. The corner where you and your friends used to hang around after school for no real reason. The school building where your entire personality got formed, good and bad. The house where someone important to you once lived. The park where your kids ran around like something in them was unbreakable. The restaurant where you celebrated the milestones that actually meant something. To a stranger passing through town, those are just locations. To you, they're chapters. They're proof that you existed, that you belong to something, that your life has a shape. Psychologists have understood for a long time that human beings don't just need success or comfort or achievement. We need continuity. We need our lives to feel like a coherent story. We need to feel connected to who we were, not just who we are now. Familiar places provide that anchor in a way that almost nothing else can. The person who stayed in their hometown didn't just stay in one place. They stayed connected to their own history. And in a world where everything seems to change faster than most of us can process, where entire industries get wiped out in a decade, where the news feels like it's coming too fast to absorb, that continuity, it's worth more than most people realize. But even that isn't the deepest thing. Because underneath social capital, underneath identity, underneath continuity, there is one more thing. And it might be the most important thing of all. And I'm going to get there in just a second. But if you're finding value in this, genuinely hit subscribe if you're not already. I put out videos every week that are built exactly like this. The kind that make you look at something familiar and see it completely differently. No file. No padding. Just ideas worth your time. Okay. Back to the thing underneath everything else. There's a word that keeps showing up in psychology research on human happiness. Not success. Not achievement. Not wealth or status or freedom. Belonging. The long-running Harvard study of adult development, one of the longest studies of human happiness ever conducted, keeps arriving at the same conclusion after 80 years of data. Close relationships are what keep people happy and healthy throughout their lives. Not money. Not fame. Not accomplishments. Relationships. We need places where we are genuinely known. Places where our story exists before we walk into the room. Places where we don't have to constantly reintroduce ourselves and prove our worth. And here's what most people who left their hometown quietly admit. If you talk to them honestly sometime around their late 30s or 40s, rebuilding belonging is hard. Like harder than they expected. You can build a career in a new city. You can furnish an apartment and fill a calendar. You can build a surface-level social life that looks full from the outside. But building a place where people genuinely know you, where your actual history exists in the walls and streets around you, that takes time that most of us dramatically underestimate. For many people who stayed in their hometown, belonging wasn't something they searched for. It just grew. One conversation, one familiar face, one decade at a time. Not because they were lucky, because they never stopped the clock. So here's where I want to land with all of this. Modern culture built an entire mythology around leaving. And in doing that, it failed to understand what staying built. Because when you actually lay it all out, the people who left gained opportunities. The people who stayed gained roots. The people who left built careers. The people who stayed built community. The people who left created new beginnings. The people who stayed created something that gets stronger with every passing year. Neither of those is automatically better. I want to be really clear about that. They're different, with different trade-offs, different costs, different rewards. But modern culture shouts one of them from every rooftop, and mostly ignores the other. And maybe that's why the person who stayed is so misunderstood. Society sees what they didn't do. It almost never notices what they did. The decades of relationships nobody can replicate overnight. The deep community that knows their full story, not the edited version. The history woven into the physical world around them. The quiet, invisible, slow-built sense of belonging that actually took a lifetime to create.